What is up, everybody? Jack here with DevSlopes.com and the DevSlopes Southern Command Center. And today we're officially going to kick off building our iOS client application. Now we're just going to make this a simple iPhone application. It's going to have some table views in it. It's going to have a map view. It's a pretty cool little app, but we're going to design this right from the ground up. We're going to have data models. We're going to have data services. We're going to separate our data from our views. So without talking about it anymore, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing I need to do is create a new Xcode project. So I'm going to do that and pull it up here on my main screen. We're going to create a single view application. And I'm just going to call it, I'll just call it API client. And then fill in your details here. For devices, I'm going to go ahead and choose iPhone. Now, we're not going to be doing any testing. I'm going to go ahead and leave unit tests in here. If that looks good to me, let's go ahead and do next. And I'm going to save this on my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and create a Git repository here. All right. So here is our application. Now then. One thing to note is we're going to use our local machine, our developer machine. So I'm going to pull up my terminal here. I'm going to go ahead and start Mongo. And then I'm in my my folder here for our project, our node project. So I'm going to go ahead and do npm run dev. And we're going to go ahead and fire the server up and leave it running while we're working on this app. Alright, that takes care of that. Now then, one thing to note is since we're on our local machine instead of a server with SSL, is we're going to have to disable app transport security. Now, if you follow the directions for DigitalOcean like I laid out and you install a SSL certificate, you can use HTTPS, so you won't need to disable it. But for our case, we're going to have to, so I'm going to come to our info plist and I'm going to add a new key. And I'm just going to type app transport security settings. Then I'm going to expand that, and I need to add another key under there, and it's allow arbitrary loads. And I need to change that to yes. That is going to let us connect to our local server without using HTTPS. Okay, now then, I'm going to set up some folders here, or some groups. I'm going to have a services group. I am going to have a resources group. And then I'm going to have model view controller. Actually, I want a new group. So we want model view and controller. And the last one here is model. So we've got model view controller, resources, and services. Now resources, I'm going to put my assets in there. Info plist in there. App delegate, I'm going to put under controller. I'm going to delete this view controller.swift here. And move it to trash. I'm going to move my main storyboard and launch screen under view. And then I'm going to right click on controller and say new file. We're going to add a Cocoa Touch class, and this is going to be a UI view controller. And I'm just going to name this main VC. And hit next. Save that. And then main VC is here in our controller. Now if we go to our main storyboard and we click on our view controller here, we can click on the identity inspector and we can change the class to main VC. Now I apologize if I sound like I'm about to lose my voice, but we're going to push on through this and get this app built. This is pretty cool. There's nothing cooler than building an app to use with your own service that you created. It's awesome. And you'll see what I mean. Alright, so we've got our main VC created. Now we're going to start with our models. And I'm going to need two models. I'm going to need a model for food trucks, and I'm going to need one for reviews. We won't need one for accounts because we're just dealing with one user. And once that user logs in, we really won't have any need to store more than one user. So we're just going to store the email address and the token we get back in user defaults. So to start, I'm going to right click on model and say new file. And we're going to call, let's see, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to create a Swift file. And I'm going to click next, and I'm just going to name this food truck. All right, now then, in our file here, I need to import a few things. Now, one thing about a food truck, I'm going to add a protocol on this for an MK annotation. And what that means is that our model here is going to double as an annotation for a map. So we're going to have to include some things here. First off, we need to import core location. And then we need to import map kit. That's going to give us what we need to conform to the MK annotation protocol here. So we're going to make this a class. Now, normally on my models, I would make them structs. But in this case, we've got to inherit from NSObject. And MK annotation. So we're inheriting from NSObject and we're conforming to MK annotation. And the reason we're doing that is because we're going to add a couple of properties in here that will let us turn this into a map pin, basically. And it's giving me a warning here because we're not conforming to this protocol yet. And if we go ahead and click on it here, command click, you'll see that the only requirement is that we have this coordinate. We're going to go ahead and add a title in as well. But we've got to have this coordinate. Actually, we're going to add a title and a subtitle. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and set up our properties here. We've got an ID, and it's a string. And I'm going to give these default values in case it doesn't get one. I'm not going to make them optional. We got name, we've got food type. We've got average cost. And average cost is going to be a double. We're going to make that equal to 0.0 by default. We've got geometry type. I may go ahead and put that in there for later use. I don't think we're going to need it right now, but it's not going to hurt anything. But by default, it's point. All right, and we've got to have a lat and a long. And we'll just make those equal to 0.0 by default. All right, and then here we've got to have, or we don't have to have, these are optional. But we're going to have a title and a subtitle, and I'll show you what those do here in a little bit. We've got to decorate these with Objective-C decorators because they're part of that MK annotation protocol that we're conforming to. So that's title, and it's going to be an optional string. And then we've got a subtitle. And it's an optional string. Now we've got to have a coordinate. And the way we're going to handle that is it's got to have the Objective-C decorator as well. And we're going to say var coordinate. And you see there it's a CLL or CL location coordinate 2D. And here we're just going to return CL location coordinate 2D. And then here's a constructor for latitude and longitude. And for our lat, we can just say self.lat. And longitude, we can say self.long. And that's all we've got to do. So by having these three properties here, this class now conforms to MK annotation. So we can take these latitude and longitudes and place pins on the map. And then when you click on one of the pins, it'll show the title and subtitle. It's pretty cool. We'll take a look at it here in a little while. All right. So we've got that. Now, the way we're going to do this, instead of having just a constructor, we're going to pass in data from our data service. So our data service is going to connect to our API, and it's going to grab the JSON data. And then we're going to turn around and pass that data over here to this class in a function. And that function is going to parse the JSON and set our properties and everything equal to the values in that JSON. So we're going to have a static function. And what static means, if you're not familiar, static means that you can call this function on this class and not an object or not an instance of this class. So we're not calling it on a specific food truck. We're calling it on this class by itself. And we'll just call this parse food truck JSON data. And we're going to pass in data, which is of type data. And we're going to return an array of type food truck. All right. So far, so good. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an array of type food truck. And it's just going to be an empty array to start. Now then, we need to parse our JSON data. But it could throw an error. So we've got to wrap it up in a do block, a do while block, or a do catch block. So we're going to put our do here, and we're going to say let JSON result equals try JSON serialization dot JSON object with data. And our data is our is data that we're passing in here. So we'll just put data. And then options, we're going to put dot mutable containers. And all that does is it specifies that arrays and dictionaries are created as mutable objects so they can be changed. So that's all we need to do there. And then now that we've got that, we need to parse it. And you see here, we're getting this error. That's just telling us that that we could throw an error here, but we're not catching it. But we'll catch it here in a minute. Actually, we can go ahead and put that in there. And then if we catch an error, we'll just print it. We'll just do that right there. So let's see if that clears that. Yep, okay. So now we're just getting an error because we're not returning a food truck array yet. So let's get back to parsing the JSON data. So to parse it, we need to say if let trucks is equal or equals JSON result as an array of dictionary of type string any object. So we've got an inner dictionary here of string any object, and it's an array of dictionary string any object. So then we need to say for truck in trucks. So we're going to loop through each one. I've got to have my braces here. So we're going to loop through that whole thing, this whole array of dictionary objects here. And we're going to say let truck, or no, we're going to say let new truck equals food truck. So we're just going to create an empty object here. And then we need to say new truck.id is equal to truck. And then we've got to use our bracket syntax here for our JSON. So truck sub underscore ID here. And then we'll say as string. Now remember, if these fail, we've got default values set. That's why I'm not too worried about it here. That's why I'm doing this force cast. So we'll just go ahead and continue doing this for all of our properties. And you'll remember these keys right here are all the ones that we set up in our API. All right. So we've got our average cost. Now we've got to get to our geometry. And our geometry is a little different case because you'll remember it's nested. So we need to pull out that dictionary out of that nested object. So we'll say let geometry equals truck geometry as another dictionary of type string in any object. Let me get rid of this sidebar here. All right. So basically, this is nested. So we need to pull this out as a dictionary, and then we need to step through that. So here we can say new truck dot geom type is equal to geometry type as a string. And now you'll also remember that I changed our API up a little bit, so our coordinates are no longer an array of type double. They're nested inside there again, and it's a lat and a long key. So we need to pull that out again as another dictionary. So we're going to say let coords equal geometry, and the key for that is coordinates. And it's another type string. It's another type dictionary of string any object. Okay, so now we're drilled down to our coordinates. And I've got a typo here. All right. So now we can get to our lat and long. We can just say new truck.lat is equal to coords lat as a double. We can do the same thing for long. All right, so that got a typo here, chords. Okay. So now then, the only thing we've got left are title and subtitle. And we're just going to set, the title is just basically going to be the name. So all we've got to do is say new truck.title is equal to new truck.name. And we'll say new truck.subtitle is equal to new truck.food type. Now the reason I'm doing that is because when you click on a pen, it's going to pop up that little dialog box or that little information box. And it's going to show the name of the food truck. And then underneath in a little bit smaller letters, it'll show the food type. So you'll be able to see real quick what kind of food they have. So once we've gone through all this, we need to append this. So we need to say food trucks.append new truck. All right. And we've already got our error here. So now then, after our error statement, we can return food trucks. So we've got our data model here. It's inheriting from NS object. It's conforming to MK annotation. We've got our coordinate, title, subtitle. We're setting all our properties here. And then we're adding, as we loop through, we set our properties, append it to the array, and then we turn around at the very end and return that whole array. So whatever's calling this is going to get back this whole array of food truck objects. And that's pretty much all we've got to do on our food truck. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now we're going to need another model for a review. And it's not going to be quite as complicated. And we're going to go ahead and make it a struct. And we'll just call it a food truck review. All right. So we're going to make it a struct. And we're just going to call it food truck review. Now we've just got a few properties here to add. And we're going to go ahead and give them default values as well. All right. So we've got our ID. If you'll remember, that's created for us. We've got our title that we're providing, and we've got the text, which is the basically the long text of the review. So now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing that we did in food truck. We're going to create a new static function. We're going to call it parse review JSON data. We're going to pass in data. And we're going to return an array of food truck review. All right, so we need to create our empty array first. Like so. And we got to wrap this up in another do block. So we're going to say let JSON result equal try JSON serialization.json object with data. Our data is the data that we're passing in. Reading options is .mutable containers. All right, and then once we're there, we're going to parse the JSON data. So we'll say if let reviews equal JSON result as, and here we've got another array of type dictionary, string, and any object. And, whoops, wrong curly brace. So once we're there, we got to loop through them all. So we'll say for review and reviews. And we'll say, let's see, I got to have my braces there too. I'm making some typos tonight. For review and reviews, okay. So we're going to loop through each one. We're going to say var new review equals an empty food truck review. So then we'll say new review.id is equal to review sub ID, actually underscore ID, as a string. New review dot title is equal to review title as string. New review dot text is equal to review text as string. All right, so now we just need to append that to our array. And let's see, we need to catch that. So we need to catch right here. All right, so we're there, and then finally, we need to go ahead and return our food truck reviews. Let's save that. I'm getting an error here, and I'm not sure. Ambiguous reference. Let me try this line again. I'm not sure what I did. I might have a typo in there or something. JSON object with data. So we're passing in our data. And we're going to do .mutable containers. See if it builds. All right. Not sure what I had wrong in there. You were probably yelling at me through the screen. Anyway, we got it now. And so this is pretty much it for our models. In the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and get started on our data services. We're going to have one called data service and another one called auth service. And they're going to do what they sound like. The auth service takes care of registration and authentication, and the data service is what's going to let us grab our food trucks and things like that. So we're off to a good start. Let's go ahead and move over to the next video and get started on our services. We'll see you over there.